Yo, what's up, everyone? I think I'm live. Can someone just, Nate, you're in the chat, dude. Give me a shout out. Let me know I'm live. Nice. All right. Hello, everyone. Already got some serious questions in here. Very cool. What's up, Blaine, Josh, Nate, Kyle O'Shields, Kyle, I'm not sure your last name, Blaine, Mike D. Maria, Mike C., Josh, Retta. Hello, everyone. Trish. Oh, this is registered. Trish, what's going on? Garrick, AJ. Very cool. Good to see you guys. What is up, Joshua? Some good questions I got on the Instagram story. You guys always have great questions, but these were some really good ones. So I didn't announce it. I've done a horrible job at advertising this, but if at some point on here I'm going to give away a shirt. I know Zach is really diligent about doing that, and I suck at doing that. So for those of you that are on here, at some point in the chat, I will give you guys a free shirt. So there's that. What else? I had a couple things I wanted to say. Oh, if you didn't see it already, so next year, Zach and I are going to do physical meetups with you guys. We kind of teetered on the idea of doing meetups this year, but to be honest, between all the stuff we had going on with Elite Meet and other stuff we're doing, first live stream, nice, Mike. But anyway, so we're going to do them next year. We already have 3 planned, like hardcore, actually have locations and everything. We're going to start announcing where these things are pretty soon. Yeah, Blaine, bring the LaCroix to the meetups. But yeah, it'll be cool to meet you guys, honestly. Kyle, I'm not going to give away locations quite yet because we're not really sure how we're going to release the locations, because we really do want these to be just for OA members. Which I guess is kind of obvious, but we don't want this to turn into, at least the way we're looking at the meetups right now, we're really hoping that they're more of like a legitimate opportunity for us to meet with the people that we're trying to help and coach and mentor. It's not to just get random people to show up. So we're hesitant to give away details quite yet. We're not hiding it from you all. You all are going to find out, but we're just trying to be kind of more deliberate so that it actually comes off as what we want it to be, which is like Zach and I meeting you guys, not just randoms. So anyway, so that's going to be really exciting next year. We got, we loved the giveaway we did of all that, the kit that I had. I have a stupid amount of gear sitting in my shed that I'm just, like, a lot of it is not even, I didn't even like use. One of the interesting things about when you're a SEAL is other companies, like random companies that sell products to the DoD. Think about, like, a perfect example. On the giveaway, there was that dry bag that I gave away. I forget who got it now that I think about it, but dry bag. That dry bag is not made by the military. It's made by a company that sold their product, and the military bought it. But the way the military buys things is they buy them in bulk. They don't do the, oh, I'll buy that one dry bag. They're like, oh, I'll buy like 1 million dry bags, and we'll outfit them to our, whatever unit. But the military, the DoD, has like monopoly money. They have an infinite supply of money. And if you're a company that is selling a product that the DoD might buy, it's like all you need is one customer. If you're trying to sell it to the DoD, if you get like the Army to buy your product, they're going to buy like 1 million of them. And it's like you're set at that point. You just re-up your contract every year. So there's a fierce competition to get the military to buy products if you're a company that sells things to the DoD. And typically it's like a bid process where like a couple companies will have the same product, and the DoD or the Army, the Navy, whoever will like bid and choose the one they want. All that's to say, the unit that people want buying their product is the SEAL teams. They get the marketing side. They get to say, this Navy SEALs use our product. and the military has a bigger budget for the SEAL teams. I should say the Navy does. And so if you look at it from the lens of the employer, of the company, they are prepared to just give their equipment to the SEAL teams in hopes that somebody on the team will be like, oh my God, like this was game changing. This bag, holy cow. And that internally the team will be like, we need this. And so companies throw like basically unproven gear at the SEAL teams in hopes that someone will really like it. And so what happens is we get issued stuff that nobody really else gets issued, and it's just free. They're like, hey, this company wants us to use their like special UV like face shield, and so you get issued this thing, and you just like throw it in your locker because you're never going to use it. But we got some pretty cool stuff. I mean, it was like clothes. Man, dude, I have like probably 2 or 3 duffel bags of not clothes that I've even worn. I mean clothes that I thought were good enough to keep that I threw in a bag that I'd never used before because I turned in a ton of my stuff so I didn't need it. And so I have like just mountains of gear. Like seriously, I have a shed just for my gear, and I have 2 storage lockers for my gear, and I'm not even in the military anymore. So the point is we're going to give a ton of this stuff away, and that's what we're going to do next year. So anyways, meetups are coming and more giveaways, and just going to respond to a couple of these. Kyle, so is it whatever company can sell it to them for the cheapest? That's generally how it goes. Yeah, it's a race to the cheapest amount. Josh, were you impressed with the gear you came across? Some of it for sure. Honestly, a lot of the stuff, it's like there's and I don't know if this is a saying, but it's something I heard from a very successful entrepreneur that actually we met through Elite Meet. He founded this co-working space in Atlanta. The guy's killing it. And he was like, so all companies produce a product, right? You know, OA produces a community and mentorship, right, for a very specific audience. And, you know, Nike makes shoes. I know they do more than that. And you have, you know, Planet Fitness is a gym. The point is everybody's got a product. And the way he described it is he was like, there's 2 types of products. There's only 2. There are vitamins and there are painkillers. It's easy to replace vitamins, right? You're taking your multivitamin, you'll buy it. People buy vitamins, no big deal. But if a company stopped selling a multivitamin, you just, you know, if multivitamins went out of style, you'd just go buy other types of vitamins. Whereas painkillers, if someone said, oh, well, nobody makes painkillers anymore, like the world would like fall apart because painkillers are impossible to replace. So typically if you're starting a business, it's like, is my product a vitamin that certainly people will buy vitamins, or is it a painkiller where my customer base like literally can't live without this product? There is no other way. It's a painkiller or it's not. And so the stuff that we got at the SEAL team was like 99.99% in the vitamin category, where it was cool, it was sexy, but it wasn't anything we actually needed. And I think that a lot of companies were trying to just get anything in front of the SEAL teams in hopes that someone would like it and that the Navy would bite off and buy it. So we had a lot of like random things, like new flashlights. It's like, I got a flashlight. You know, a new laser grip on your gun that's like a little bit smaller and it like fits into the foregrip, or you know, multi-tools. Oh my God, the amount of multi-tools we got, which is great. Multi-tools are awesome, but we'd get so many of those. We'd get like little knives, like almost like paring knives for like high-speed steel. Tons of clothes, tons and tons of clothes. Like Patagonia was like just throwing clothes at us. So yeah, like lots of like vitamin type items. Nothing that was like game changing. Blaine, the Berry Amendment put out the way, yeah. So the DoD, I think they have to, all products that they give need to be made and sourced, you know, out of the U.S. Anyways, I've gone completely rando, but that's fine. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to give you the list of questions that I have from the Instagram story, and we'll kind of dive into those. But I can already see that there's 4 questions that are in the Patreon crowdcast, I should say, little question box. So if you don't hear your question or you're just sitting around waiting, just go in there and upvote the questions you like so I can kind of answer them in the order that they, I guess, are of interest. Anyways, okay, so here we go. So here are my questions. So from Nick Mitchus, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. He asked, are there any tips on kind of going through a complete life change? And what he's referencing is joining the military, as if that is a full departure from your life. And I thought that was a great question because the way we've been approaching you all is, for the most part, that you're ready to kind of jump into this thing. But I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about like what it means to completely change your life, probably for the first time, for many of you. So we'll do that one. Trish mentioned, she just wrote PTSD, so I'll touch on PTSD a little bit. I'm going to number these. Ala Hohen asked for me to go kind of more in depth for the process from going civilian to going to boot camp, kind of like what to expect when you're talking to your recruiter, what they're going to say to you, and kind of that whole process end to end. So civilian to, I'll use the SEAL teams because, again, that's all I got in terms of specific guidance. I'll tell you what the process is like when you enlist. Like, I'm a civilian. What do I do to become, contracted? So that's 3. Regan asked me what was my favorite experience in the SEAL pipeline. So I'll do that 4th. Wes Adams, my dude, Wes asked a couple questions. I kind of lumped them together. He had some questions about a car. Like, is the Navy going to ship my car around? Like, what's the deal with buying a car when you're in the pipeline or the team? And then he also asked about pay as a SEAL. So I'll talk about that. We may or may not get to this one, but so Ian Frazier, he was just like, look, I'm about to graduate college, but I only have passion for SOF. Any suggestions? And so instead of going crazy on the college versus, joining the teams or whatever, I'm just going to talk about that calling you get for SOF and how you should handle it. So those are the 6 topics I have. I actually have a 7th, I'm sorry, and I should have put this earlier, but so Mike D. Maria sent me a message asking for me to elaborate on when I quit a marathon before I went to BUD/S. I talked about it in a post I did yesterday. And Mike wanted to know, like, I forget how he phrased it, but he wanted me to elaborate a little bit on, like, how did I know that wasn't going to happen again when I got to BUD/S? Because I probably, and I did, in BUD/S, reached a point when it was really hard again, kind of reminiscent of when it was really hard during the Cape Cod Marathon that I bailed on. Like, what was it that showed me that I was not going to quit? And did I have that epiphany before, BUD/S, or did I have it in the moment? I'm like, I got this, like that kind of thing. I'm going to talk about that. And then I'll jump into the questions that I have in the question box here. So I always go super long-winded, and I'm fine with that, but I do have a hard stop at 5 p.m. It's 4:15 now. It's going to end up being me that just rambles for too long, but I'm going to try to be fairly pointed with these questions because we have a bunch to cover. So if you got questions, throw them in the question box, but no promises I get to them. All right, so the first one was from Nick Mitchus, tips on a complete lifestyle change, meaning joining the military, some tips on overhauling your life. So in my life, I have transitioned, a number of times. There's some big life changes for me, but I would say there's really 2 distinct life changes. There is going from civilian to military, which is a huge change, and then there is going from military to civilian, which is less of a big change, but those 2 stand out. I have other ones, I became a father, I got married, I moved a couple of times, but in terms of like really changing almost everything about my life, there's 2 that stand out, and it's joining the military and leaving the military. And so since all of you, for the most part, are thinking about joining the military, I think it's, apropos to talk about that transition, civilian to military. I think that what you should think about when you go in is your impression of the military right now is highly romanticized. And what I mean by that is you have I'm putting you all into a bucket here, and I think this is pretty accurate, but maybe this doesn't necessarily apply to you. But either way, you've discovered special operations. Maybe it's the SEAL teams, maybe it's something else, but you've discovered special operations, and it's become this thing that is now very much guiding your life. It tells you when to work out. It tells you, what to read. And what I mean by that is that passion you have for special operations, it's really put some structure in your life right now. And when you think about special operations, there's this natural reverence to the people that succeed in getting through selection. Somebody like me. I am very confident, because I've been in your shoes, that even though I hope I'm very relatable, or I should say approachable by all of you, I make sure that I'm a very approachable person. There is, from your perspective, this huge gulf of experience between me and you, simply because I've been through the training that you haven't been through yet. And so it only adds to this kind of mystique about special operations, putting it higher and higher and higher on this pedestal, right? The problem with that is when you go in with such lofty expectations of something, you're really only standing to be let down. Because if you've put special operations in a place where, like, there is nothing in life that will ever be as good as special operations, it's the most important job with the coolest people, the most important thing, right? If that's where you're placing it, I mean, if it meets your expectations, then it's the best thing that's ever happened, right? But you already assuming it's going to be. So it's not going to exceed your expectations. At least it's very unlikely to. It's much more likely to be a bit of a disappointment in some regards. And so what I found was really hard, and I'm kind of building this up a little bit. I have this highly romanticized version of the SEAL teams and of BUDS and of the people I'm going to meet and my instructors and all of that. But what I failed to really appreciate is boot camp, and joining the military is a part of the process. When you are home and all you're thinking about is the teams and whatever, all these amazing things you want to do, it's very easy to forget that the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get indoctrinated and, marshaled into the military. I never thought about that shit. I was like, yeah, boot camp's 2 months, whatever. That's the first thing I do, but let's be real. Like, I'm going to get through boot camp, and I should be confident about that, because if I'm not confident about getting through boot camp, then why the hell am I going to BUDS or some other selection program, right? Like, you feel fine saying, I'll get through boot camp. It's not a big deal. But you need to remember that you're a civilian. There is very little stricture put on your life. I mean, besides maybe your parents, or if you're out of the house already, besides basic life responsibilities, job, exercise, entertainment, family time, you're on your own program. You can do whatever you want. You can speak however you want. You can wear whatever you want. And it isn't that you're taking it for granted. It's just a reality that you have domain over your life. Even if you have really strict parents, or if you're out of the house and you have a really strict boss or something, the reality is you are not contractually obligated, probably, or at least you're not contractually obligated to the point where if you broke that contract, you would go to jail, right? Like, you don't have intense structure in your life. It's kind of on you to kind of do what you want to do. Like, you hate your job, you can quit. You hate your family, you can leave. You can go do something else. You want to blow off an assignment at school and dick around and go on Netflix, go for it, right? Like, you have domain over your life. When you join the military, all of that goes away. It's, in my mind, when you join the boot camp, it feels like you went to jail. And very quickly it feels that way. And you're like, why didn't I give this any more thought? Why did I just write this part off? Not that boot camp's so hard. You're going to get through boot camp. But your first jaunt into the military is kind of unsettling. You go from having all the luxuries of being able to just be a human being to being restricted to something that resembles being in prison for 2 months, every day. You don't get to take a break from it. It's like, yeah, you're going to be in jail for 2 months. See you later. No outside communication with the exception of letters, like snail mail. It's a brutal start, right? And then you leave that, which does feel shocking, and it feels like, okay, this isn't my life. This is just a thing I'm dealing with. Then you go to Bud's Prep. So I'm using the SEAL pipeline. You go to Bud's Prep, and it's great. It's a great program. But like you start to recognize in yourself that you're kind of highly militarized because you just went through boot camp. I remember thinking when I left boot camp, I was like, they didn't brainwash me. I wasn't indoctrinated. Like I was 22 when I showed up. I went to college. Like I'm like a smart guy. I'm not going to be affected by boot camp. I go to Bud's Prep and I'm like folding my shit in like really specific ways. I'm like making my bed like super tight. I'm like walking certain ways and holding my hands like I'm holding quarters. And I'm like aware of this stuff, but like I'm just doing it, right? And you start to recognize that like I've been kind of militarized. And by the time you're done with Bud's Prep, it's like you've kind of struck a balance where you've become a little bit more like a civilian, like you're a little more normal. You know, when you first show up to Bud's Prep, you're like real rigid and like it's a great training program. It's much more relaxed. By the time you go to Bud's, you think you've relaxed yourself. You think you've like, okay, I'm out of boot camp. I've been out of boot camp a couple months, and now I'm normal again. But then you go to Bud's, and Bud's is like a bunch of bros. It's like very unmilitarized. It's very strict, and it's definitely a military program, but it's like scary men telling you what to do, and most of it's not military stuff. It's like fucking with you stuff, and it's just another shock to your system of like when you see stuff about Buds online, and even you're probably picking up on it in a lot of the content that I put out about it. You're looking at it through the lens of it being a military selection course, and by all accounts, it is that. But it feels like you're on this weird island just kind of being tortured a little bit. It doesn't feel like the military because you went to boot camp. That felt like the military. You've never seen the military. It felt like the military. You go to Bud's Prep, it's like a gray area where you're like, okay, this is kind of cool. I can like train, and I'm like kind of like it's a little bit more relaxed. And then you go to Bud's, and you're like, I got to be dialed in. This is going to be super military, but it's like totally not at all. There's like strict stuff put on you, but it's this bizarre world in which you're kind of highly disciplined. You are highly disciplined in Bud's, but it's like pseudo military discipline. It's like Bud's discipline. It's like selection discipline, if you will, where there are these just weird standards that are not really commonplace in the military, but they've been put on you to just force you to do stuff that they want you to do so they can judge you for it. So okay, going back to the root question here, because I kind of deviated, is how can you prepare for such a major upheaval in your life? I think it starts with understanding that there's a long process to selection, but it all starts with boot camp, which is designed to be shock and awe for everybody, even if you're just joining to go be some random thing in the military. Boot camp is designed to literally like rock your world and change you. So go in knowing that that's going to happen and don't be shocked when it does. I went in being like, oh, fuck boot camp. I'm going to Bud's. Like, why should I even think about boot camp? That's a bad approach because boot camp is shocking. If for nothing else, it's shocking in like how little control you have on your life while you're there. It's hard to prepare for that. I don't think there's something you should go mimic to try to like feel what it's like, but you should definitely appreciate that boot camp is going to be shitty for you. And for anybody on here who's been through boot camp, I'm sure they can attest to that. I'm not sure if Sam's on here or not. Sam Syed, he went through boot camp. We were communicating while he was in boot camp, and sure enough, it's like this shitty thing. So if you're making the transition to the military, just give boot camp the credit it deserves in your mind. You're going to get through it. This is not a matter of you not getting through it, but it's going to be very different from the life you lead now, and it's a bit shocking. And then as you kind of get into selection, it's very different from the world you thought it was. I tried to communicate like the weirdness of Buds in the 6-part Buds journey I did, but like that doesn't even do it justice. It's like you're just in a different world when you're in Buds, and probably that's true of all selection. It's a very kind of bizarre roller coaster you're about to enter into. But the first stop of boot camp, people overlook, and it catches you off guard, and it just makes the whole process shittier. So just go in saying, okay, boot camp's going to suck. Not because it's going to be so hard. It's just going to kind of knock me off my feet a little bit. And then I'm going to get in the pipeline, and I'm going to embrace the fact that whatever idea I had about selection, it's probably going to be a lot different. for better or worse, probably for worse, to be perfectly honest, because again, you put it on this huge pedestal, and then you get there and it's a little bit different. Maybe the instructors are kind of dicks to you, and you're like, what the hell? Maybe like there's elements to the training that you're like, why are we doing this? All that stuff's just going to happen. But I think that just give boot camp its credit. You'll get through it, but it does suck. Yeah, so I guess I didn't really answer your whole question, but that's like the transition into the military. It's a rough one, but loads of people have been through it. You'll be fine too. Just expect that shock and awe, and you'll get through it. I'd love to just continue to ramble, but I gotta hold true to what I said, and I gotta move kind of quickly, so I don't eat up all the time. Okay. Next one is on PTSD. I'm going to cover this briefly. It's a huge topic, but I don't have the time to go through it all. So PTSD, I think that the way I categorize it, and for those of you that are new to OA and maybe don't know my full story, I did one combat tour. I did one kind of administrative tour. I did the minimum amount of time in the teams, and so that's my experience, the SEAL teams. That's not to say I'm not like able to form an opinion about things, but my impression about PTSD and about kind of what it means to be in the teams is a lot different than, you know, someone who's been in for 20, 30 years with multiple combat tours. So just putting that out there as a disclaimer. But I think that it's undeniable that if you go see combat in the special operations, there's a good chance that you're going to be affected by it. But what I've found is that in the moment, I was not affected. In the moment, it felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I feel very at home doing this job. It was really afterwards, and you're not aware of it, you're kind of blind to it, where I was like real angry, and I just didn't get along with people. It wasn't like I had some like thing that was like, oh man, that fucked me up, and now I'm like angry all the time. It was more like you develop this hardened exterior that you just kind of project on people, and you're very ego driven. And this is me. Maybe this is not everyone. And it wasn't until I got out of the military and had an opportunity to kind of become self-aware and kind of look back at my time in the military as it compared to now. And I was just a very angry and cynical person when I was in, and that really started after my first combat tour. And now I'm not that at all. It's like I've had a chance to kind of, you know, de-escalate, if that's even a word, from where I was in the teams. But I think that one of what PTSD, I don't think PTSD is that immediate aftermath. You know, I think PTSD is the kind of long-term, or I should say, when you're in that kind of in the red space, when you're angry and you're kind of a dick after being in combat, that's not really PTSD. That's just kind of a reflection of having been in a pretty intense environment. I think PTSD happens when you realize, like, and I've talked about this on a couple of the live streams, that there are just things that you've experienced that truly you just can't share with your loved ones or really with anybody. And it's funny, like I even catch some shit for this from some of you guys a little bit, for like just giving you all the information I possibly can. Whether it's about buds or it's about my impression on whatever situation, I try to give as much as I possibly can, because I really feel like sometimes I'm talking to my younger self, and what would I want to hear? What are the important things for me to hear? And it's amazing that probably one of the more important things that I wish I could impart on you all is my own experience with combat, which is obviously tethered to the jobs you're looking at. The problem is it's so hard to talk about. And not because, oh, I can't find the words and I'm, you know, so emotional about it. It's that the things that I would bring up on this, if I started doing it, I'm telling you right now, it would change your impression of everything I've told you. It would change your impression of me, for better or worse. I don't really know, because it's impossible to understand. If I put it in words, that these are the things that happened overseas. If it was put into words without context and understanding, it doesn't line up. The experiences, I would tell you what happened. If I told a teammate, they'd say, oh yeah, I totally get that. But if I told you all, unfortunately, it would be taken out of context, because I think our society as a whole is like looking for signs of like fucked up veterans that are like going to do horrible things. and that's typically tethered to PTSD. And so you have like these experiences that like you just can't say unless you're talking to a truly someone that's either been there with you. Well, actually, that's about it. Someone who's like experienced it with you. Um, so I think that like if there was such a thing as PTSD, which there definitely is, I didn't mean to say it that way. When it comes to PTSD, I think that combat-related PTSD for veterans, it takes on the form, in my opinion, of you have these experiences that you just can't really discuss with anyone. I can't go to my wife and say, "Look, honey, I wanna share this experience with you that I had because I want you to be a part of my life fully. Because we've been married almost 10 years. I want you to have full insight into my life. You know, we were very transparent with each other. The things I would share with her would be distressing for her, deeply, deeply distressing. And so what have I done? I've put this kind of poison on my wife by claiming it's this, you know, cathartic event of like, here, I'm sharing this deep personal thing with you. But all I'm doing is I'm putting her in a position where she's hearing things that, again, if you weren't there, they just sound fucking horrible. But to me, I can see the nuance and the context, and so it is, I can rationalize it and understand the things that happened as any other soldier would. But my wife can't, so I'm not going to talk to her about that. I'm not going to put that on her. It's not right. That's not, in my opinion, I'm only harming her. You know, then she's going to be like, oh my God, like now that I know he's been through that, do I need to like ask him about it again? Do I need to make sure he's okay? Like, I'm okay. It's a sacrifice you make. I think that the sacrifice, and I've said this on another live stream, I'm unbelievably proud of my service. I'm unbelievably proud of having been a SEAL and getting the opportunity to go serve overseas in a conflict. That's something I'm deeply proud of, and I would never change it. But there's a real sacrifice that you pay, and it's not the physical wounds you carry, and I have some of those. It's the stuff that you actually can't really share with the world because it's not right. It's yours to bear. It's your burden to bear. You and your teammates can certainly relate, but to be honest, those discussions don't happen very often. Because even though I could pull one of my closest buddies, his name is Nick, I could totally give him a call and we could talk about the nastiest shit that's happened. But even though we would get it, we don't want to have that discussion because it's distressing. So you need to remember that like that is what the price you're going to pay if you go down a route of seeing combat. Like that is part of the deal. That's the sacrifice. You know, it's not. I mean, to be honest, like getting blown up because I got blown up, I'm glad that happened. It's given me an unbelievable perspective on life. It's given me a great sense of what my priorities are and are not. And I didn't lose any limbs. I just have shrapnel in my legs and stuff. I'm very fortunate. I'm glad that I had that experience. I would not wish it on anyone. But like, I'm probably somewhere in the recesses of my mind, probably deeply traumatized from that experience. But it doesn't sound painful to talk about that. I'm here. Look at those scars on my leg. Like, it's not a big deal. It's the stuff that is like personal and like intimate combat that's really difficult to share, and I don't plan to. And that's difficult to carry around sometimes. So I think that it's hard to give you the context, so I'm not going to. It's not really possible, but I think that's probably what if there was in PTSD, like imagine if you've done like 20 combat tours. Imagine the burden you're carrying around. I did one, and I'm sitting here telling you I can't even talk about it because it's hard to put in context. Imagine doing that 19 more times. I know people that have done way more than me, you know? So it's just like there's a spectrum of PTSD. I'm on the very junior end of it. There are people that they're carrying around a lot, and they actually have nowhere to put it. So that, in my mind, that is PTSD. Quickly, going to see if there's any questions. Yeah, well, Trish, I think that, so Trish, I'll be honest. So Trish just said shame on us as a society that we're not more understanding towards our vets. I love the sentiment. But I do think that the reality is people are doing their best to be there for the veterans, and the veterans are doing their best to communicate their experiences as best as they can. I just think that the reality is when there's combat happening, there is a group of people that are going to bear the brunt of that experience. They signed up for that, and they know that, and everybody else that sees them do that, 99.99%, no matter where you are in the political spectrum, no one actually really looks at veterans that have to go overseas and do the job as like these terrible people. They're like, thank you for what you did. I don't understand it. Maybe I don't say it to you, but people care. It's an impossible thing to relate. So I think that as a society, I think politics have gotten in the way to a degree, but I think most people care deeply about the sacrifices that veterans make. All right, I got to move quick because I'm terrible at time management on these. So I get so wrapped up and I get so pumped talking to you guys. All right, so 3, this is from Ella Hohen. Basically talking through the process from civilian to enlisting and going to BUD/S. So I graduated college in May 2010, but by the time I graduated, I had already reached out to what's called the motivator in my area. So I was in New England. I reached out to this thing called SWONEC. It's an acronym. It's Special Warfare Operations New England Candidates. It's a Navy-sponsored DEP pool. DEP stands for Delayed Entry Program. Basically, it's like that segment of the country. If you're going to enlist in the Navy, you got to go through this group to earn your contract. I reached out to them because I want to say like in July of 2010, I called the recruiting office in my hometown in Quincy, in Quincy, Mass. I said, what do I need to do to become a SEAL? And they said, reach out to this group called SWONEC, which is like the DEP pool. Reached out to them. They said, hey, come on out and train with us. Like, we'll get you on base. You're not contracted or anything. And I went out and I was lucky enough to go train with some dudes that were doing some hand-to-hand combat and, getting ready to earn their contract. And so when I graduated college in May 2010, literally in May 2010, I went to that recruiter in Quincy and said, okay, I've been in contact with the group, the DEP pool, and I'd like to join. And he said, okay, well, we got to make sure you're physically healthy and that you're competent. And so on the spot, he was like, I'm going to have you do a PST. And so in the office, I did push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and a run. There was no pool, so he just kind of ruled it out because he wanted to be sure that he was recommending someone that was in good shape. And I did really well on that. It was fine. He's like, okay. He's like, you're going to need to go basically do a PST with the DEP pool, SWONEC. And so I reached out to them. I got connected to some people over there, and they said, okay, you have to be at this Air Force base near your area. I think it was in July. So this is May, I graduate. In July, I'm told, go to this Air Force base, and you're going to take a PST. For me, it's a little bit different than what a lot of you guys have gone through with the SEAL Challenge contract, where basically you're being told you need to sign a Navy contract in order to take PSTs and earn your contract. That's not actually what I did. What I did is I had someone escort me onto a base where they conducted the PST and took the PST as a pure civilian. And then what happened is the mentor, this was in July, the SEAL mentor that was there said, okay, your scores are great. I'm going to recommend you for a SEAL contract. He gave that recommendation to the MEPS facility, which is the Military Entrance Processing Station. They're all over the place. This was in Boston. He recommended me for a SEAL contract. I went to my recruiter, who's unconnected to SWONEC. He's a regular Navy recruiter. And he was like, okay, I heard that you did a good job on your PST, so now I'm going to put you up to go do your physical at MEPS. And so there's basically two things that are sent to MEPS. There's like, John wants to join the Navy, and that's what my Navy recruiter is doing. He's firing my name up there to like be medically cleared. Simultaneously, there is a recommendation that I should get a SEAL contract. And so I got told by my recruiter, my Navy recruiter, hey, they want to take you for a physical. So you're going to go to MEPS and do the physical. And so I went to MEPS I want to say in like August. And I did my physical. That's where I had to do a drug test. That's when I started to realize, like, oh shit, I'm super pee shy, and that sucked. I remember I went in to take my drug test, and it's like a row of urinals, and there's like a red piece of tape on the ground. I had to stand behind the line to pee, and you have to start peeing. Two Marines stand on either end of you, and they're like, all right, don't start peeing until we're ready, because see it leave your body. And I'm like, great. And so everybody else starts pissing. I can't go. Everybody else is told to step away, and I'm just like standing there, like with two Marines staring at my dick, and they're like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "Can I just go in the stall and use the stall to go? Is that all right?" And they're like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And I was like, no. And they're like, no, you can't use the stall. Go drink some water and come back. So I drank a bunch of water, came back, and I had to go so bad that I peed for like an hour. But anyways, I did the drug test. I did the physical test. It was all, I guess, good to go, barring the results of the drug test. And then I had to go and basically sign a contract. Actually, this was the second day, so I was told to go home. So I left. My recruiter said, okay. The next day I came in his office, and he's like, you passed your physical, drug test is fine, and they're ready to submit your SO package, your SEAL challenge thing. So I went back to MEPS, but this time I went with my recruiter, and he was like, okay, so you got to like basically choose a random Navy rate, which is a job in the Navy, and you're going to sign that contract. And then they're going to basically use that contract to say, yep, he's in delayed entry because he signed a Navy enlistment contract officially. And then they're going to replace it with your SEAL, SO contract, which is I was like, that sounds like a horrible idea. He was like, look, you've already been endorsed for a SEAL contract. You pretty much just sign the Navy contract, and then they're going to replace it. And so that's what they did. I signed the Navy contract, and then like a couple of days later, they're like, yep, you can come in and now sign the SEAL contract, which is going to take precedence over the one you just signed. And so I did that, and then it was a waiting game to find out when I was going to get my ship date, which is the day I actually go to boot camp. I had to take a PST every month to show that my scores were good. I did that with the Special Warfare Operations New England Candidates thing, the DEP pool. I did that with them every month. And then I got a ship date of December, and December 6th was the date, and that was it. The day before you go, like December 7th actually was the day I was supposed to leave. They make you go to a hotel on the night before. I think it's like to make sure it's streamlined on the day that you leave, and maybe so you don't like go AWOL, because technically you've signed a contract to go. But I went to a hotel, so I had my goodbye party the night before, went to a hotel. Next morning, got up, went to the MEPS building. You take another drug test. So I was like, hell yeah, I love drug tests. Had to do one of those. Actually, no, I didn't do it at MEPS. You do it when you get to Chicago. Anyways, and I got on a bus, went to the airport, got on a plane, flew to Chicago, and hopped on a bus, and then I was in boot camp. There's much more to it. I feel like I probably butchered that, but that's kind of the whole process. So that's that. I'm going to move along here to 4, which is Regan asks, what was my favorite experience in the pipeline? If I'm being honest, right, I feel like I'm pretty good about that. There was really 2 instances that I was like on cloud 9 in the pipeline. One was when I passed pool comp, because if you know my story, I was terrible at pool comp. I failed it a bunch of times, and then by the skin of my teeth, I passed it on my second to last attempt, and that's the moment I recognized that I'm probably going to be a SEAL. It was like vindication for me. I was so close to getting dropped for it. And so to pass pool comp, which for those of you that don't know what that is, it's like right at the halfway point of SEAL selection, and it's really the last major test gate that people fail. And so I was through that, and I was like, okay, I'm in. That was great, and that probably takes the cake. The other one is just pure vanity. The first day I got to wear my camis with the trident stitched in was like the most epic experience of my life. For when I went through, you finish SQT, which is like the hold on. Sorry. I may need to leave and come back here in a minute. My wife needs something. I'll finish this up. Anyway, so after you finish SQT, I had language school. It was 3 months long, a language school. And you get your camis, and you wear your camis with your trident when you graduate. And so for 3 months after SQT, I was in San Diego, and I just got to like be a Navy SEAL. But like it was, you're walking on base with a trident on for the first time. Like it really is like one of the single most satisfying moments ever. And then you go to a team and you're like, oh, that's right, I'm not even a new guy yet. I'm like the lowest of the low. So it's a brief moment where you get to be the top of the food chain, and it's just an incredible experience. So passing pool comp and wearing my trident for the first time. Now look, I'm going to try to go to my text messages, and it might kick me out of this. So just hold tight. I'm going to be right back. I just need to read a text message. If I leave, I will be back. I promise, okay? All right. I don't even know if you can see me. All right. I hope you guys did not leave. All right, cool. So I have to. My wife is now telling me that there's some people at our house that won't leave until I get there. Like we have contractors at our house. So I'm gonna breeze. I'm gonna breeze through these. This is why I had a hard stop at 5. I just suck at sticking to my timeline. Okay. Wes asked about cars. The Navy will ship your car from duty station to duty station, and people buy cars as soon as they finish really SQT, but people have cars during SQT for sure. Basically, the Navy will move your car all over the place. When you move duty stations, they'll ship it for you. It's definitely common to buy cars. And in terms of pay, early on, you're making like 65 to 70,000 as an enlisted SEAL, which is amazing for enlisted. So keep that in mind. It's not an amazing salary, but for enlisted SEAL, for an enlisted person in the military, that's incredible. And you'll go up probably 6 figures or more if you're like a chief and beyond. Unfortunately, Ian Fraser, I just don't have the time to talk about if you're only passionate soft. I hope you can, like go and check out some other content that I've done where I talk about this calling. In fact, if you go to, this is directly to Ian Fraser. If you go to my Instagram, my personal Instagram, and you go to the literal first Instagram TV video I ever made, it's Should You Be a Navy SEAL? I think that's what it's called. And there's a trident as the image for it. And I talk about that level of obsession you have, or I had, and how that ultimately led to me making, God damn, well, it wouldn't be a live stream as me if shit wasn't falling off. So go check that out, because that has basically my opinions on this. And if you're new to this, dropping my thing is typical. Okay, and then lastly, Mike, I'm sorry. I know you literally asked me to elaborate on the marathon thing. You literally DM'd me about it, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'll totally do that. Mike D. Maria, I'm sorry. The brief overview is when I was 19, I ran a marathon in Seattle. It went well. I ran it on a whim, no training, and I was like, hell yeah, I'll just do more of these. I signed up for another marathon, which was 4 months later, and I didn't do any training for it. I got to that marathon, and I completely, it's called bonking. Like, I just completely ran out of energy and was a shit show halfway through, and so I made excuses, dropped from the race, and quit. I knew I quit. Everybody knew I quit. I just never talked about it. Later on, when I went to SEAL training, I was aware that that had happened, and it scared me to think that I was going into something that's obviously going to be more difficult than a marathon. And when I did that marathon, I quit that time. So I have the ability to quit on something. That's what I was thinking. But what happened was I was so aware of how miserable it felt to quit, and I felt so bad about it that was like an impetus not to quit. The fear of feeling what quitting felt like, because I had felt it before, was so powerful that before I even showed up to Buds, I knew I wasn't going to quit, because it was so awful living with myself, having known I quit something, that I just was like, I will do everything I can to avoid that feeling. And so for me, the experience of quitting on the marathon actually gave me some motivation to not quit at Buds, because I literally wanted to avoid the feeling of, oh my God, I quit something. It gave me like a knot in my stomach. It literally made me feel ill thinking about facing my family after being like, I quit. And so for me, it definitely was a motivator. And before I showed up to Buds, I had made that decision that I was not going to quit. I didn't know if that was actually going to happen, but retrospectively, I was confident I was not going to going in. So that's kind of it. So now I'm going to really quickly look at the Kylo Shields. Why were you in Seattle? Family in Seattle. Josh, would you say politics now is making it more difficult to do your job as a SEAL? How much does that get in the way? So I'm not active, so I don't know how much of an impact it's having on the guys doing their job now. I would say that like the internal divisions inside of the team, it's pretty intense right now, and it's just growing, unfortunately, because the SEALs they're so in the limelight, honestly, for a lot of bad stuff, that it's hard for that not to have an impact on how people interact with each other that are trident wearers. So I think that it's having an effect, but I can't say with certainty because I'm not active. I don't know what that's like right now. I can tell you that you definitely feel ramifications of political decisions or even political campaigns when you're in the teams. It does have an effect on you, but I think that it's gotten significantly worse, the impact politics are having on the military lately. And I think in particular for the SEAL teams, it's tough. I'm not going to go super deep on that, only because I feel like I run the risk of coming off political, like highly political on this, and I've tried very hard to keep politics completely out of OA. I really appreciate the question, Josh. I'd be happy to offline if you were eager to learn more about that. Shoot me a DM and I'll chat with you more offline. But I'm going to kind of end it there and just say it's probably having an impact, but I can't speak to it exactly. Okay. Real quick, Josh. Don't take another question from Josh. Good, you're nailing questions, dude. I'm going to answer this one and then I have to roll, guys. Don't take it the wrong way. Just not sure how to ask. I understand that serving your country is one of the most selfless things you can do. More towards your marriage, did you ever feel it was a selfish thing to join the SEALs? By that I mean your wife is now on this crazy journey with you, going through the major ups and downs and time away. Did that ever cross your mind? What were some of the things you struggled with the most through your journey? No disrespect. Thank you for your service. Yeah, Josh, totally don't take that as a disrespectful thing. And I'm glad people have the willingness to ask questions like this on here. That's the whole point of this thing, is to ask questions that are like kind of awkward to ask, but you have somebody in me that's like trusted, and I'm not going to like dime you out for asking. Even if that was offensive, I wouldn't give you a hard time. So everyone should continue to ask the questions you actually want to ask. Yes, it's totally selfish. It is. Like, it's 100% selfish. If you're married and you're like, I'm going to go be a Navy SEAL, like you're putting your spouse in a position where what are they going to say without looking like jerks, right? You can't do that. Like, come on. Like, what about me? It's like, hey, I'm serving my country. This is a big deal. Like, this means a lot to my country, to me, to you. It's going to have great positive effects for you because of how cool you're going to be. You're putting them in an impossible situation. But if you get your spouse on board and they accept that this is the thing you're going to do, it's like anything else. It just, because there's a selflessness angle of serving your country, it's hard not to, you want to say that being a SEAL is a totally selfless act, but it's not. You're getting quite a bit out of it, and it's this hugely fulfilling thing, but your spouse doesn't really get all those benefits. If we were talking about some career, right, it would be like if I was going to be a lawyer, a high-powered lawyer. Hey, babe, like, I'm going to go be a high-powered lawyer. I'm going to go through law school, and I'm going to go through this training. I'm going to be gone a ton, but we're going to make a ton of money, right? Maybe that's enough for your wife. Maybe it's not. But with the SEAL teams, it's like, hey, I'm going to go through this really hard thing where I'm going to get tons of praise and purpose, and it's going to be really important for me, and I might die in the process. I'm going to be gone a ton. We're not going to make a bunch of money. And our marriage is probably going to fall apart, right? Like, it is kind of selfish when you look at it that way. I would say, though, that there is a badge of honor that the wives and the partners wear when they're in these relationships, because they're aware of how intense this thing is that you're doing. And they're aware of the sacrifice. And if they own that and they're proud of it, which they should be, it's a very purposeful life. I mean, you end up being somebody that other like people look up to, that you're their spouse is like overseas somewhere. How do they keep it together? It's a really remarkable thing to be a spouse of somebody that's in these teams. So there's a badge of honor with it, but looking at it purely objectively, I would say it's somewhat selfish to go be a SEAL if you're married. If you have kids too, it is what it is. If you wanted my answer, that's my honest answer. Okay, shirt. Josh or Nathan should get the shirt. You know what, Josh, you asked some awesome shit, and so and actually Nate just said I already want a shirt. So Josh, you get the shirt, brother. Shoot me a DM, and I'll give you the code to get your free shirt. You asked some good questions. Everybody else asked good questions. I'm sorry that I'm like rushing right now, but I could talk endlessly to you guys because you guys are cool. But I'm gonna go. I hope this was useful. If I didn't answer something, I'm sorry. Follow up with me. I'll do my best to answer it as fast as I can. You guys are awesome. Thank you all, and have a wonderful night. And if I don't talk to you again, even though I think I will, happy Thanksgiving, and best of luck to you guys. See ya.